And gentlemen, let me tell you something today. Discipline ain't something you just wake up with. It's not like a gift under the Christmas tree. Discipline is a choice you got to make every single day of your life, and sometimes you can't wait on motivation because motivation comes and goes. You have to force yourself into discipline, and I know that might sound rough, but it's the truth. Because your life will never change if you keep waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect mood. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something right now. If you truly want to become disciplined, the very first thing you got to understand is you cannot keep negotiating with yourself. That is where most people lose before they even get started. Every single day you wake up, your brain is going to give you an option. It's going to whisper to you that maybe you deserve a little more rest. Maybe you'll start tomorrow. Maybe you can skip just this one time. But here's the truth. You can't keep making deals with your weakness. Every time you hit that snooze button, every time you put something off, every time you say, I'll get to it later, you are teaching your mind that excuses are stronger than your goals. That's why so many people stay stuck in the same place year after year, because they keep letting those little negotiations rob them of their progress. See, discipline is not about how you feel in the moment, because your feelings are not reliable. You'll never always feel like working out. You'll never always feel like putting in the hours at your craft. You'll never always feel like saving money instead of spending it. Discipline is about doing it regardless of how you feel. You got to train yourself to act on commitments, not emotion. And let me tell you, when you start breaking that pattern of negotiation, when you start giving yourself that way out, you start building a different kind of strength inside of you. That strength is called self-respect, because you can't respect yourself if you keep breaking promises to yourself. Think about how many times in your life you told yourself, this is the year I'm going to change. This is a week I'm going to start. This is the morning I'm going to wake up early. And then when the moment came, you gave in to comfort. You rolled over in bed. You skipped the gym. You wasted time on nonsense. Now imagine if every single one of those times, instead of giving in, you forced yourself to follow through. Where would you be right now? How different would your body look, your bank account look, your career look, your relationships look? See, all that difference comes from those tiny little choices, those negotiations. You either win or you lose. And here's the problem. Every time you lose that negotiation, it doesn't just cost you the task you skipped. It costs you momentum. Momentum is everything in life. Once you get moving, it becomes easier to stay moving. But once you start quitting, it becomes easier to keep quitting. So the real battle isn't between you and the world. It's between you and that voice inside your head that wants to settle. And the only way to beat it is to shut down the negotiations completely. Now, I know somebody's thinking, but Steve, it's hard. I don't have the energy. I'm not motivated. Let me break it to you. Nobody is motivated all the time. Not me, not you, not the most successful people in the world. They don't win because they're always motivated. They win because they stopped asking themselves for permission. They took the option of quitting off the table. When you commit, truly commit, you take that decision away from your emotions. You say, I don't care how I feel. I don't care what I want. Right now, I already decided what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. That's what makes the difference. You see, when you wake up and the alarm rings, it's not about the alarm. It's about whether you let comfort control you or whether you take control over yourself. When you decide to get up anyway, you are proving to yourself that you are stronger than your excuses. And once you do it one time, you realize you can do it again. The more you win those little battles, the easier it gets to win bigger ones. You don't build discipline overnight. You build it one decision at a time. And the first decision you got to make is to stop negotiating with your weakness. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something about discipline that people overlook. Most folks think discipline is about these big, heroic actions, like running 10 miles out of nowhere or working nonstop for hours. But that's not how real discipline gets built. Real discipline is born out of small habits. Things you do every single day until they become part of who you are. You can't climb a mountain in one leap. You climb it step by step. And that's exactly how you've got to approach your growth. Too many people keep looking at the whole mountain and get overwhelmed so they don't even take the first step. But if you just focus on one small action, one little change you can repeat, over time those small habits stack up and create a lifestyle. Think about it like this. If you do 5 push-ups a day, you might laugh at how small it seems. 5 push-ups won't change your body overnight, but if you do it every day for a week, then 2 weeks, then a month, something starts to happen. Not only are you getting stronger physically, but you're also training your mind to understand that you keep your word to yourself. That's the most important part of discipline. Not just the result, but the identity you build when you follow through. The same goes for reading 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes doesn't seem like much, but do that every day for a year and you've spent over 60 hours feeding your mind. That's 60 hours of growth that most people will never give themselves because they keep waiting for some huge change to happen all at once. The key is not to underestimate the power of small. People fail at discipline because they start too big and burn out. They say they're going to go to the gym 2 hours every day. They're going to cut out every bad habit at once. They're going to save half their paycheck right away. That's too much pressure. And when they slip, they feel like they failed, so they give up altogether. But if you start small, something you cannot excuse yourself out of, you win every day. Winning builds confidence, and confidence builds consistency. It's better to start with 1 push-up and build up than to aim for 100 and quit after a week. When you create these small habits, what you're really doing is rewiring your brain. You're showing your brain that you are someone who takes action. You're rewriting the story you tell yourself about who you are. Most people's story is, I can't stick with anything, I always quit, I never follow through. But every time you do something small consistently, you start telling yourself a new story. I do what I say I'll do, I keep my commitments, I'm the kind of person who finishes. That new story is the foundation of discipline. Once you believe that about yourself, bigger habits become possible because you trust yourself to follow through. And let me tell you, the beautiful thing about small habits is that they compound. Just like money in a bank account earns interest, your actions earn interest too. You save a little money consistently, and one day you look up and realize you've built a safety net. You practice your craft 15 minutes every day, and one day you look up and realize you're skilled at something people admire. It didn't happen because you made one giant move. It happened because you made 1,000 small ones that added up. The secret is to stop waiting for the perfect day to change everything and instead decide on one habit you can stick to no matter what. Don't say, I'll start when I have more time or I'll start when I'm ready. Start with what you have right now. If you can only give 5 minutes, give 5 minutes. If you can only do a little, do a little. That little action is worth more than a whole plan you never execute. Discipline doesn't live in the big moments. It lives in the small daily choices. And when you stack enough of those choices, you create a life that's built on strength, not excuses. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to understand discipline, you got to understand something most people don't even notice. Discipline is not just about what you're willing to do, it's about what you're willing to stop doing. See, success doesn't just come from addition, it also comes from subtraction. And the truth is, so many of you could already be further ahead if you weren't so tied up with distractions that steal your time, steal your focus, and steal your energy. The hardest part of being disciplined isn't always the work you have to put in. It's the comfort you have to walk away from. Think about how much of your day gets wasted on things that don't serve your future. Hours spent scrolling through social media, flipping from one video to the next, watching somebody else live their life instead of building your own. Time spent gossiping, complaining, or sitting around with people who don't even want to grow. That's not harmless entertainment, that's theft. Every minute you spend caught up in distractions is a minute you could never get back. And those minutes add up to hours, those hours add up to days, and before you know it, you've lost years of your life to things that left you with nothing in return. Discipline means you've got to make hard choices about your environment. If the television is always on, you got to turn it off. If your phone is constantly pulling your attention, you got to put it down. If you're surrounded by people who are comfortable wasting time, you got to step away. That doesn't make you better than anybody else. It just means you respect your time enough not to waste it. Time is the most valuable currency you've got, and once it's gone forever. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time, so you got to protect it like treasure. When you cut distractions, it's not going to feel comfortable at first. You're going to feel that itch to check your phone, to go back to what's easy, to fall into the same routine. That's normal because you've trained your brain to chase quick pleasure instead of long-term reward. But if you push through that discomfort, you'll start to see something powerful happen. Your focus sharpens, your energy rises. You realize how much mental space you actually free up when you're not drowning in constant noise. That's when discipline starts to feel less like a chore and more like a choice, because you can see the progress you're making without all the distractions slowing you down. Now, don't get it twisted. Distractions are not always bad things. Sometimes they're fun. Sometimes they're harmless in small doses. But the problem is they become dangerous when they turn into habits. It's not about never watching a show or never enjoying yourself. It's about making sure those things don't control you. Discipline means you know when to stop, you know when enough is enough, and you know how to prioritize what really matters. Too many people say they don't have time to chase their goals, but the truth is they do have time. They just giving it all away to things that don't matter. Let me break it down like this. If you spent 1 hour a day cutting out distractions and focusing on something productive, that's 7 hours a week, 28 hours a month, over 300 hours a year. That's the equivalent of nearly 2 months of full-time work that you just created out of nowhere by simply removing distractions. Now imagine what you could accomplish with 2 months of focus every single year. That's the difference between someone who talks about what they want and someone who actually gets it. Discipline is the ability to say no when everyone else is saying yes. No to wasting time, no to negative energy, no to habits that don't serve you. Every no you say to a distraction is really a yes to your future. And if you can learn to master that, you will see yourself rise in ways you never thought possible. Ladies and gentlemen, if you really want to grow, you got to understand that discipline does not survive in isolation. It is almost impossible to keep yourself sharp if the people around you are dull. You cannot surround yourself with folks who are content with doing nothing, who are satisfied with mediocrity, who see no reason to push themselves and expect to stay motivated and disciplined on your own. Iron sharpens iron. That means if you want to be strong, you need to be around strength. If you want to be focused, you need to be around focus. Discipline thrives in the right environment, and the right environment usually involves accountability. Accountability is powerful because it puts a weight on your word. See, it's easy to break a promise when you only made it to yourself, but when somebody else is watching, when somebody else expects you to follow through, that pressure pushes you to do better. If you've ever worked out with a trainer or a partner, you know what I'm talking about. On your own, you might quit after 10 reps, but when somebody's counting on you, suddenly you find the strength to push for 15. That's not magic, that's accountability. You don't want to let that person down, so you stretch yourself further than you thought you could go. Now think about your circle. Are the people around you pushing you higher, or are they pulling you lower? Do they clap when you're working hard, or do they tease you for trying? Do they inspire you to do better, or do they tempt you to slack off? Because the truth is, you become like the people you spend the most time with. If your circle is lazy, negative, and undisciplined, you're going to absorb that energy, no matter how strong you think you are. But if your circle is hungry, driven, and focused, you're going to rise to meet that standard even on the days you don't feel like it. Some of you need to take a hard look at the company you keep, because they might be the reason your discipline never sticks. You can't build a future in a room where everybody else is living in the past. You can't get serious about your goals when everybody around you is serious about wasting time. That doesn't mean you have to cut everybody out of your life, but it does mean you have to be intentional about who you let influence you. Sometimes the most disciplined decision you can make is to change your circle. When you get around people who hold themselves to a higher standard, it rubs off on you. If you walk into a room where excellence is normal, you start to feel uncomfortable being average. You don't want to be the weak link. You don't want to be the one who didn't show up prepared. That pressure is good pressure. It forces you to elevate. And once you get used to being in that kind of environment, you won't settle for less. You'll start demanding more of yourself. And in turn, you'll attract more people who think the same way. Accountability doesn't just come from people. It also comes from systems you create for yourself. Maybe you keep a journal where you track your progress every day. Maybe you set up reminders and deadlines that you refuse to move. Maybe you share your goals publicly so people know what you're working toward. All of these things create external pressure to match your internal desire. Without accountability, discipline is fragile, but with it, discipline becomes stronger than your excuses. Discipline becomes stronger than your excuses. The truth is, nobody achieves greatness alone. Every successful person you see has had someone pushing them, checking them, challenging them, or reminding them of who they could be. And if you don't have that right now, you need to seek it out. Find a mentor, join a group, or simply spend more time with people who already live the way you want to live. Your discipline will multiply when you place yourself in the right company, because the right company won't let you settle for less than your best. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something about discipline that most people miss. Discipline is not just about forcing yourself to do hard things. It's about remembering why you're doing them in the first place. If you don't have a strong reason, if you don't have a clear purpose, then discipline will feel like punishment. You'll start to resent it. You'll start to dread it. And sooner or later, you'll quit. But when you tie your discipline to a powerful why, suddenly the same actions feel different. They feel meaningful. They feel like steps toward freedom. See, everybody says they want to be disciplined, but not everybody knows why. They just know they're supposed to work hard. They're supposed to sacrifice. They're supposed to grind. That kind of discipline doesn't last because it's built on obligation, not on vision. If you're waking up early just because someone told you to, you stop as soon as it gets hard. But if you're waking up early because you want to give your kids a better life, or because you're chasing a dream that means everything to you, then even when it's hard, you'll push through. The why is what separates people who quit from people who keep going. Think about a parent who's working 2 jobs to put food on the table. Do you think they always feel like getting up at dawn? Do you think they never get tired? Of course they do, but their why is so strong that quitting is not even an option. They have people depending on them. They have a vision of a better future. That vision fuels their discipline. That's what you need to find for yourself. What is it in your life that's worth suffering for? Because discipline is sacrifice. And if the sacrifice doesn't feel worth it, you won't stay consistent. Maybe your why is your family. Maybe you want to break a generational cycle of struggle. Maybe you want to be the one who changes the story, who leaves something behind for the next generation. Every time you feel like slacking, you remind yourself, I'm not just doing this for me, I'm doing it for them. That thought alone can give you the strength to get back up when you want to lay down. Maybe your why is freedom. Maybe you're tired of being stuck in the same financial situation, tired of answering to a boss you don't respect, tired of feeling trapped. Discipline becomes easy when you can picture the freedom that's going to buy you. When you save money, when you build skills, when you invest your time wisely, you're not just suffering, you're building your way out. Every sacrifice is buying a little more freedom. And that thought keeps you going when you want to stop. Or maybe your why is simply becoming the best version of yourself. You know deep down that you were created for more than just surviving, that you've got gifts inside of you that deserve to be developed. Discipline is what unlocks those gifts. Without discipline, your potential stays locked up, but with it, you get to see who you really are. And when you start to live up to that version of yourself, the pride you feel in who you've become is worth every hard day. The thing about your why is that it has to be personal. Nobody else can give it to you. Nobody else can hand you a reason strong enough to carry you through the tough times. You have to sit with yourself and figure it out. And once you do, once you grab hold of that reason, you've got to keep it in front of you every single day. Write it down, say it out loud, put it where you can see it. Because the days will come when you're tired, when you're unmotivated, when you just don't feel like it. On those days, your why is the only thing strong enough to pull you through. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to discipline is that they sit around waiting to feel ready. They wait for the perfect day, the perfect mood, the perfect moment, like discipline is going to sneak up and knock on their door. Let me tell you, if you're waiting for perfect conditions, you're never going to move. There is no perfect time to start. Life will always give you a reason to wait. You'll always be too busy, too tired, too scared, too unsure. If you're looking for excuses, you'll never run out of them. Discipline is about acting anyway, moving anyway, showing up anyway. You don't get disciplined by thinking about it. You get disciplined by doing. The truth is, action creates discipline. People think discipline comes first, but it doesn't. Nobody wakes up one day with a full tank of discipline just because they wish for it. The only way you get discipline is by taking action before you feel ready. The first time you wake up early, when you wanted to sleep in, the first time you go to the gym, when you didn't feel like it, the first time you save money instead of spending it, that's when you start to build discipline. Every action you take without waiting for perfect conditions strengthens your ability to do it again. If you sit around waiting to feel motivated, you're going to be waiting for the rest of your life. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Some days you'll feel like you can take on the world, and some days you feel like you can't even take on yourself. But discipline doesn't care about your feelings. Discipline is showing up when you don't feel like it. And the crazy thing is, once you take action, motivation often shows up after. You go to the gym, you get moving, and suddenly you feel good about it. You sit down to work, you make progress, and suddenly you're in the zone. That's because action creates momentum, and momentum creates motivation. Waiting is a trap because the more you wait, the harder it gets to start. You tell yourself, I'll start Monday. Then Monday comes and you push it to next week. Then next week becomes next month. Before you know it, a year has gone by and you're in the exact same place. But if you start now, even small, you're already ahead. Starting imperfectly today will get you further than starting perfectly someday, because someday usually never comes. Think about people who succeed. They didn't start when it was convenient. They didn't start when all the conditions were lined up. They started in the middle of the storm. They started with doubt in their mind, with fear in their heart, with obstacles in their way. The difference is they didn't wait. They acted. And because they acted, they built the strength they needed along the way. That's how discipline is born. Not from comfort, but from movement in the middle of discomfort. You have to stop thinking discipline is about feeling ready. It's not about readiness, it's about decision. You decide that no matter how you feel, you're going to act. You decide that no matter what's going on around you, you're going to move forward. You decide that you're done letting life happen to you, and you're going to start happening to life. That decision, followed by action, is what forces discipline into your system. It's like pushing a heavy boulder. At first, it's stuck. It doesn't move. It feels impossible. But you put your shoulder into it. You push with everything you got, and eventually it shifts. The moment it shifts, it gets easier to push again. That's discipline. It feels heavy at first because you're starting cold. But once you get moving, once you create momentum, it becomes easier to keep going. The hardest part is always the start. And the start will never feel perfect. That's why you can't wait for perfect conditions. You have to act, even when you're scared, even when you're tired, even when you don't feel ready. Because the act of moving forward is the only way you'll ever build discipline.